There comes a moment in every life when we begin to sense that something isn't flowing the way it should. You try, you push, you pray, you hope, but still there's a weight. Something unseen, something unnamed, quietly standing in the way. And so often we look outward. We say, if only this situation would change, if only that person would move, if only that door would open. But the truth, the deep and honest truth, is that many of the greatest blockages we face are not around us, they are within us. You see, not every barrier is visible. Some are formed in silence, over time, through moments we didn't even realize were shaping us. Fear that settled in after disappointment, doubt that grew after repeated failure, guilt that lingered long after the moment had passed. These things do not announce themselves loudly, yet they influence every decision, every reaction, every expectation we carry. And sometimes we learn to live with them so comfortably that we no longer recognize them as blockages at all. We call it just the way I am. We call it being realistic. But deep within, something continues to whisper that there is more, that life was not meant to feel so heavy, so restricted, so dimmed. There are also voices we've allowed to echo inside us, words spoken by others, moments of rejection, labels that were never ours to carry. Over time, these voices become internalized, shaping how we see ourselves and what we believe is possible. And without even realizing it, we begin to limit our own lives, not because we lack ability, but because we have accepted a smaller vision of who we are. And then there are habits, patterns of thinking and living that quietly reinforce these blockages, returning to the same negative thoughts, responding with the same fear, avoiding change because it feels uncomfortable. These cycles don't just happen, they are repeated, reinforced, and eventually rooted. But here is where something powerful begins to shift, when we become aware. Because awareness is not weakness, it is not failure, it is the beginning of freedom. The moment you pause and truly look within, not with judgment, but with honesty, you begin to uncover what has been hidden. You begin to see the places where fear has been speaking louder than faith. You begin to recognize the thoughts that have been holding you back, the patterns that have kept you stuck, the beliefs that have quietly shaped your reality. And yes, it can be uncomfortable. It can be humbling. But it is also deeply empowering, because once something is seen clearly, it can no longer control you in the same way. You don't have to pretend it isn't there. You don't have to cover it up or push it aside. Instead, you bring it into the light. You acknowledge it. You face it with courage. And as you do, something remarkable begins to happen. What once felt like an immovable wall begins to reveal itself as something that can in fact be broken down, piece by piece, thought by thought, choice by choice. You start to realize that you are not defined by your fear. You are not bound by your past. You are not limited by the voices that once shaped you. There is something greater within you, something stronger, something ready to rise the moment you stop agreeing with what has been holding you back. And this is not about blaming yourself. It is not about carrying more weight. It is about reclaiming your power. It is about understanding that while you may not have chosen every experience that shaped you, you do have the ability to choose what shapes you next. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you begin to ask, what is this revealing in me? Instead of waiting for everything outside to change, you begin the transformation within. Because when the inside begins to shift, the outside cannot remain the same. And it all begins with a simple, honest willingness to see. And as you begin to see clearly what has been hidden within, another truth gently rises to meet you, one that brings both comfort and responsibility. You are not meant to walk this journey alone. There is a divine presence, a quiet and faithful guide ready to lead you, but not to carry you in place of your own steps. Too often people long for a sudden escape. They hope for a moment where everything changes instantly, where every burden disappears without effort, where every answer arrives without seeking. And while there are moments of deep spiritual encounter, moments that touch the soul in ways words cannot fully describe, they are not meant to replace growth. They are meant to awaken it. The Holy Spirit does not come to remove your need to choose, to act, to grow. The Holy Spirit comes to illuminate those choices, to strengthen your steps, to guide you when the path is unclear. It is not a shortcut around life. It is a light within it. There is a difference between being led and being carried without participation. One invites transformation, the other avoids it. And true, lasting change is never built on avoidance. You may feel a prompting, a quiet nudge towards something better, a sense that you should let go of a certain habit, or step into something new, or speak with honesty where you once remained silent. These moments are subtle yet powerful. They don't force you, they invite you. And here is where many hesitate, because guidance often asks for something in return: trust, obedience, courage. It asks you to move even when you don't have all the answers, to take a step even when the outcome is not fully visible. But that is where growth begins. The Holy Spirit does not overwhelm you with noise or pressure. It speaks in clarity, in conviction, in a way that aligns with truth and integrity. It will never lead you into confusion, manipulation, or unrealistic promises. Instead, it calls you toward alignment, toward becoming the person you were always meant to be. And sometimes, that guidance challenges you. It may reveal areas where change is necessary. It may bring awareness to patterns that need to be broken. It may ask you to release things you've held on to for far too long, not to take something from you, but to make room for something greater. This is where partnership is formed. You begin to respond. You begin to listen more closely. You begin to act, even in small ways. And as you do, something remarkable happens. You grow stronger, clearer, more grounded. Not because everything has suddenly become easy, but because you are no longer navigating alone. There is a steadying presence, a quiet assurance that you are being led, not pushed. Guided, not controlled. And this guidance does not remove effort, it refines it. It directs your energy toward what truly matters. It helps you avoid distractions that once consumed you. It sharpens your awareness so that you begin to recognize what aligns with truth and what does not. You stop chasing every opportunity, every idea, every promise that sounds appealing on the surface. Instead, you become more discerning. You begin to understand that not everything that looks good is meant for you, and not every open door leads to the right place. This is not limitation, it is wisdom. Because when you are guided with clarity, your steps become more intentional, your decisions become more grounded, and your progress becomes more meaningful. And yes, there will still be moments of uncertainty, there will still be challenges, but you will face them differently. You will not be driven by fear in the same way. You will not be easily shaken by every obstacle, because there is something within you that remains steady, something that reminds you that you are being led even when the path is not fully clear. This is the beauty of divine guidance. It does not demand perfection. It invites willingness. It does not require that you have everything figured out. It asks only that you remain open, attentive, and responsive. Step by step, choice by choice, you begin to move forward, not in haste, not in desperation, but with a quiet confidence that grows over time. And as that confidence grows, you begin to realize something deeply freeing. You are not waiting for life to happen to you. You are actively participating in it, guided by something greater, yet grounded in your own responsibility. This is not about escaping the journey, it is about walking it with purpose. And when guidance and action come together, transformation is no longer a distant hope, it becomes a living reality. And as you begin to walk with that sense of guidance, learning to listen and to respond, there comes another moment of awakening, one that requires both honesty and discernment. Because not every voice that sounds spiritual is truthful, and not every promise that feels uplifting is real. There is a deep human desire for relief, for breakthrough, for something that changes everything at once, and in that desire, many have been drawn toward messages that promise instant transformation, effortless success, guaranteed outcomes, if only you follow a certain formula, repeat certain words, or believe strongly enough. It sounds appealing, it feels hopeful, but it quietly shifts your focus away from truth and into illusion, because real growth does not come from shortcuts. It does not come from bypassing the process, and it certainly does not come from placing your trust in exaggerated claims that remove your responsibility from the equation. There have always been voices that take something sacred and reshape it into something marketable, something simplified, something that promises more than it can ever truly give. They speak in certainty where there should be humility. They offer guarantees where there should be guidance. And over time, people begin to believe that if something hasn't changed yet, it must be because they didn't believe enough, didn't do enough, didn't deserve enough. And that is where the harm begins. Because instead of empowering you, it burdens you with false expectations. Instead of guiding you, it confuses you. And instead of bringing you closer to truth, it leads you further away from it. You were never meant to carry the weight of unrealistic promises. You were never meant to measure your worth by outcomes that were never guaranteed in the first place. And you were never meant to surrender your discernment in the presence of something that simply sounds convincing. Discernment is not doubt. It is wisdom. It is the ability to pause and ask, does this align with truth? Does this encourage growth, responsibility, and integrity? Or does it promise ease without effort, reward without change, outcome without process? Because anything that removes the need for growth may feel comforting for a moment, but it will not sustain you. And this is where a shift must take place, You begin to release the need for instant answers. You let go of the idea that everything must happen quickly to be meaningful. You stop chasing every new promise that appears, every message that claims to hold the secret to your breakthrough. Instead, you return to something steady, something grounded, something real. You begin to understand that true spiritual growth is not loud or exaggerated. It does not rush you or pressure you. It unfolds over time, shaping you in ways that are deep, lasting, and authentic. It invites you to grow in awareness, to develop discipline, to cultivate patience. It calls you into a life where your actions align with your values, where your choices reflect your intentions, where your progress is built on consistency rather than impulse. And yes, this path may seem slower. It may not offer the immediate excitement that false promises often bring, but it offers something far more valuable: stability, clarity, and truth. Because when your foundation is built on truth, you are not easily shaken. You are not constantly searching for the next answer, the next solution, the next promise. You become rooted. You become steady. You begin to trust the process, not because it is easy, but because it is real. And as you let go of what is exaggerated, what is misleading, what is empty, you create space for something genuine to take its place. You begin to hear more clearly. You begin to see more accurately. You begin to move with intention rather than reaction. This is not about becoming skeptical of everything. It is about becoming aware. It is about learning to recognize what nourishes your growth and what distracts from it. Because not everything that shines carries light. Not everything that speaks loudly carries truth. And when you learn to discern the difference, you reclaim something powerful. You reclaim your ability to choose wisely, to stand firmly, to move forward without being pulled in every direction by every new claim or promise. You no longer feel the need to rush. You no longer feel pressured to prove something through immediate results. You begin to value depth over speed, substance over appearance, truth over illusion. And in that shift, something within you becomes stronger, more grounded, more at peace. Because you are no longer building your life on what sounds good in the moment. You are building it on what will last. And that is where real transformation begins to take root. And as you begin to release what is false and return to what is real, another truth begins to unfold, one that reshapes how you understand healing itself. Because healing is not something that simply appears because you desire it. It is something that grows as you come into alignment. There is a difference between wanting change and becoming ready for it. Many people carry a deep longing to be free from what weighs them down, to be released from past pain, to move beyond old patterns, to step into something new. And that longing is real. It matters, but longing alone does not create transformation. Healing begins when your inner world starts to come into agreement with the direction you say you want to go. It is easy to say I want peace, but still hold on to resentment. It is easy to say I want clarity, but continue to entertain confusion. It is easy to say I want to move forward, but remain attached to what is familiar, even when it is no longer healthy. Alignment asks for honesty. It asks you to look at your thoughts, your actions, your choices, and gently but firmly bring them into harmony with what you are seeking. Because what you repeatedly think shapes how you see. What you consistently do shapes who you become. And when those things are out of alignment, progress feels slow, heavy, even impossible at times. But when alignment begins, something shifts. You start to notice your thoughts more clearly. You begin to question the ones that lead you back into fear or negativity. You don't accept them automatically anymore. Instead, you pause, you choose differently. And this is not about perfection. It is not about never having a negative thought or never making a mistake. It is about becoming aware enough to redirect yourself when needed, to gently bring yourself back into alignment again and again. There is also a call to release what has been carried for too long. Forgiveness, for many, is one of the most difficult parts of healing. Not because it is unclear, but because it requires letting go of something that once felt justified to hold on to. But forgiveness is not about excusing what happened. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of it. Holding on to resentment does not protect you. It keeps you tied to the very thing you wish to move beyond. And as long as that weight remains, it becomes a blockage, quietly influencing your thoughts, your reactions, your sense of peace. Letting go is not easy, but it is necessary. And alongside forgiveness comes discipline, the quiet, consistent choice to act in ways that support your growth, even when it feels uncomfortable. To step away from habits that no longer serve you. To create new patterns that reflect the life you are building. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but in truth it is freedom in structure. It is the ability to guide yourself, to stay aligned with what matters, to continue forward even when motivation fades. Because there will be days when you don't feel like it. Days when old patterns try to return. Days when progress feels slow. But alignment is not built in a single moment. It is built in those very choices repeated over time. And as those choices accumulate, they begin to shape something powerful within you, a sense of stability, of clarity, of inner strength. You begin to feel different, not because everything around you has changed, but because something within you has become more grounded, more aligned, more at peace. And this peace is not dependent on circumstances. It is not fragile. It does not disappear at the first sign of difficulty. It remains because it is rooted in something deeper than temporary conditions. This is where healing becomes real, not as a distant hope, not as something you are waiting for, but as something you are actively participating in, thought by thought, choice by choice, step by step. You are no longer just wishing for change, you are becoming it. And as you align more fully, you begin to notice that what once felt heavy starts to loosen its hold. What once seemed overwhelming becomes more manageable. What once felt impossible begins to open little by little. This is not sudden. It is not forced. It is a natural unfolding that happens when everything within you begins to move in the same direction. And in that alignment, you create the conditions where healing is no longer resisted, it is allowed. Because healing does not come from desire alone. It comes from becoming ready to live in agreement with what you seek. And as alignment begins to take root within you, quietly, steadily, there is another truth that must be embraced if you are to move forward into real and lasting change. Because even with awareness, even with guidance, even with alignment, there is still a bridge that must be crossed. And that bridge is built through consistent action. It is one thing to feel inspired in a moment. It is another to carry that inspiration into your daily life. Many people experience flashes of clarity, moments where everything feels possible, where the path seems open and the desire to change feels strong. But if those moments are not followed by action, they fade. And over time, the cycle repeats, hope rising, then falling, again and again. Breakthrough does not come from moments alone. It comes from what you do with them. There are patterns, cycles that many find themselves trapped in. Patterns of thinking, reacting, choosing, that repeat so often they begin to feel permanent. You may recognize them in your own life. The same doubts appearing at every new opportunity. The same fears holding you back just as you begin to move forward. The same habits pulling you back into what is familiar, even when you know it no longer serves you. These cycles are not unbreakable, but they do not disappear simply because you wish them to. They are broken when something different is introduced consistently. Faith plays a powerful role here. But it must be understood clearly. Faith is not passive. It is not waiting for everything to change while remaining the same. Faith is active. It is the quiet decision to move forward even when you cannot see the full picture. It is choosing to believe that your actions matter, even when the results are not immediate. And this is where consistency becomes essential. Not grand, overwhelming effort, but small, repeated actions that begin to shift the direction of your life. A different response where you once reacted automatically. A better choice where you once followed habit. A moment of reflection where you once rushed forward without awareness. These may seem small. They may feel insignificant at first. But they are not. Because every time you choose differently, you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new one. Every time you act in alignment with what you truly want, you move further away from what once held you back. And slowly, almost quietly, the cycle begins to change. You may not notice it immediately. There may not be a sudden moment where everything feels completely different. But over time, the shift becomes clear. The things that once controlled your reactions begin to lose their power. The habits that once felt automatic begin to loosen their grip. This is how breakthroughs happen, not as sudden isolated events, but as the result of steady, intentional movement. And yes, there will be resistance. There will be moments when it feels easier to return to old ways, moments when progress feels slow, when doubt tries to return, when the effort feels tiring. But this is where faith and action meet. You continue not because it is always easy, but because you understand where you are going. You continue because you have seen enough to know that change is possible. You continue because each step, no matter how small, is moving you forward. And in that persistence, something within you grows stronger. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to recognize your ability to change, to choose, to move beyond what once felt fixed. You begin to see that you are not stuck. You are simply repeating what had not yet been challenged. And now you are challenging it. There is power in showing up consistently. There is power in choosing again, even after a setback. There is power in refusing to let a moment of weakness define your direction. Because progress is not about never falling back. It is about not staying there. Each time you return to your intention, each time you realign your actions, each time you take another step forward, you reinforce a new path. A path that leads away from limitation and toward growth. And as that path becomes clearer, as your steps become more steady, something begins to open. Opportunities you may not have noticed before. Clarity that was once hidden. A sense of movement where there was once stagnation. This is what happens when cycles are broken. Not through force, not through pressure, but through consistent, faithful action. You are no longer waiting for change to arrive. You are creating it, step by step, choice by choice. And in that process, what once felt impossible begins to feel within reach. Because breakthrough is not something that happens to you. It is something you move into, one consistent step at a time. And as you begin to walk in that consistency, step by step, choice by choice, you come to a final and deeply transformative understanding. Because everything you have been moving through, every layer of awareness, every act of alignment, every effort to break old cycles is not leading you toward a life centered only on receiving. It is leading you toward a life of purpose. There is a subtle but powerful shift that must take place here. Many begin this journey focused on what they hope to gain: peace, success, healing, clarity, open doors. And these are not wrong desires, they are natural. But if the journey remains centered only on what you can receive, it will always feel incomplete. Because fulfillment is not found in accumulation. It is found in expression. You were not meant to simply gather blessings and hold them. You were meant to become a channel through which something greater flows. And when that shift begins, when your focus moves from what can I get to who am I becoming and how can I give, everything changes. Purpose begins to take shape, not as something distant or complicated, but as something lived in your daily actions, in how you speak, in how you respond, in how you treat others, in the energy you bring into each space you enter. You begin to realize that the life you are building is not just for you. It touches others. It influences others. It creates impact in ways you may not always see. And suddenly the idea of manifestation begins to look different. It is no longer about chasing outcomes or trying to control every result. It becomes about alignment with a deeper sense of meaning. It becomes about living in such a way that what you do, what you say, and who you are begin to reflect something consistent, something genuine, something purposeful. You stop measuring your progress only by what appears on the outside. Instead, you begin to measure it by what is growing within you. Patience where there was once frustration. Clarity where there was once confusion. Compassion where there was once judgment. These are not small changes. They are foundational, because a life built on purpose is not shaken by every external shift. It is anchored in something deeper. It is guided not by impulse but by intention. And this does not mean that ambition disappears. It does not mean that you stop striving, stop dreaming, stop setting goals. It means that those things are no longer driven by emptiness or pressure. They are guided by meaning. You begin to ask different questions, not just how can I succeed, but how can what I do matter? Not just what can I achieve, but what kind of impact will I leave behind? And as those questions take root, your decisions begin to change. You become more thoughtful, more intentional. You begin to see opportunities, not just as chances for personal gain, but as chances to contribute, to uplift, to create something of value. There is a quiet fulfillment in this way of living, one that does not rely on constant external validation, one that does not disappear when circumstances shift. It is steady, it is grounded, and perhaps most importantly, it is sustainable, because a life focused only on receiving will always be searching for more. But a life rooted in purpose finds meaning in what is already being lived. You begin to recognize that every step you have taken, the awareness, the guidance, the discernment, the alignment, the consistency has been shaping you into someone capable of carrying that purpose with clarity and strength. You are no longer the same person who was once held back by unseen blockages. You are no longer moving without direction, reacting without awareness, or chasing what only appears meaningful on the surface. You have become more grounded, more intentional, more aligned with something deeper than temporary outcomes. And in that place, something remarkable happens. You begin to live differently, not because you are trying to force change, but because change has already taken place within you. Your actions reflect it, your choices reflect it, your presence reflects it. You become a source of stability in places that feel uncertain, a source of clarity where there is confusion, a source of encouragement where there is doubt. Not because you are perfect, but because you are aligned. And that alignment allows something greater to flow through your life. not as something you control, but as something you participate in. This is where fulfillment truly begins. Not in chasing, not in striving endlessly, but in living with purpose, with intention, with a sense of connection to something beyond yourself. And as you continue on this path, you begin to understand that the life you once hoped to manifest is not something you were waiting to receive. It is something you have been becoming all along. And in that realization, everything finds its place. Live not just to receive, but to become. And in becoming, you will discover the life you were truly meant to live.